industrialized the production of the stickiness, invented the Lego play system as we know it today with the stickiness of the tube system. And last but not least, the third generation owner who was building the brand and taking it out to the world. And that was a series of continuous growth. And I think you will find that a lot of companies, probably also some of you in this room, have experienced that one of the most dangerous situations for a company is continuous success. Because you become blind, and in that sense, that listening discussion that Joe mentioned so carefully ceases sometimes to exist, and you start to believe that you alone own your category. And I think it was very saying for Lego when you talked to them in the late 90s and you asked about who their competitors were, that they would say on the one hand that they didn't have any competition because they owned their own category, and on the other hand they were building up a huge crisis because they could observe along with many other people that the world was changing. So in short, in the beginning of the 2000s, Lego faced a huge crisis and a disruption in ownership in the sense that they actually brought in the first professional CEO, not the owner of the company, to try and make a turnaround. So you can say, what happened, what caused that disruption in a brand that have all these great strong ideas and with a history of continuous growth? What happened in the 90s that created that crisis? And you can say, of course, there are always many reasons, but the main reason also in the company's own understanding today was that the changing marketplace, the digitalization of play, the perception that children will grow older, much younger, the feeling that once you started the PlayStation, the computer games, the cell phone games, that nobody believed that children would have the patience or the determination, the stamina to do something as slow and you could say in that sense tangible as playing with Lego bricks. So what did the company do? Of course, they tried to take their brand into all the areas in the marketplace. And you can see through this period of a relatively short historical time, Lego would expand its brand in almost any possible direction. Now, there are at least two problems with that strategy, if not three. One is, do you have the competences to stretch your brand in that direction? It's not the same thing to produce computer games as it is to produce bricks. So you have to hire in people from a completely new subculture. In this case, they set up the agency or the operations in London, hired 23-year-old programmers and playful people who felt that they had a great attraction to the Lego brand. They were sure the Lego brand could do anything. The main problem was headquarters that couldn't see all these opportunities. So by doing this, you bring in a lot of subcultures and you were confronted with a lot of dangers and difficulties because people running Lego for generations were not able and not willing perhaps to engage in all these new activities in the software issue. So there's a skill issue, there's an integration of software culture or new cultures. This was the computer games. You could repeat the issue in all the other business areas. The other thing is that you're able to deliver on your brand promise. Lego goes into clothing. People expect the colors to last forever. Parents will expect something special, a zipper or a hidden something or things that would connect in the toy bags or the food packages. So there was a lot of expectation based on the Lego brand that they could deliver to the customers because all these licensing operations were using the brand. They were slapping it onto all kinds of products, if I may be so free, but they didn't do a very good job in delivering the promise. And the last thing is obviously cash. This is very expensive. This takes a lot of investment. And if you don't get a lot of turnover at the same time, I think we have seen recently that there's also a liquidity crisis. So Lego's story now is that they had their financial crisis 5 years before the rest of the world, but they were also confronted with severe crisis, and I think it's fair to say with almost a near-death economic experience because this created huge deficits in the company. Now, what happened in the situation of the turnaround? You can say one of the implications of this going in all these directions and adapting your brand to all these different market areas is that people lost a sense of direction. This vision, this who would like to be, how we would like to be seen, were lost on people. So although you had and you still had a very committed group of employees, you can say they lost their sense of direction in that period. And although Lego were trying to do modern things in a lot of different business areas, they were not modernizing their core products. So they became very dusty and they lost a lot of coolness among their consumers. And I think I remember, I hope there's nobody from Britain here, but their most disturbing news was that a lot of customers saw them as Prince Charles, where they would like to see themselves as Indiana Jones. They were the internal metaphors that were used in order to say that they had lost the edge, they had lost the coolness. They were sort of the old daddy's brand or mother's brand, but that they had lost their appeal to the market. Back to the founder, way before the brick was even invented, to revisit and rethink the idea that Lego was about quantity, Lego was about playful learning, Lego was about a specific kind of play, not for everybody, but for the kind of children and their parents who were into that kind of play. So instead of trying to be obsessed with turnover, if you will, and mass market, I think Lego in that sense returned to its origin, but on the other hand realized that that origin had to include both, you can say, the physical artifacts and also the digital world. They also faced a huge transformation in the way they engage with their stakeholders. I think it's fair to say that while this was happening, you can say the digitalization of the play space, you also would have a lot of people on the web, programmers and so on, who would do their own inventions of what the Lego brand was about. The first type of company reaction was to sue them. They were not using the logo correctly. They were doing things on the web that they didn't like. So they had a big legal department that would spend a lot of time in protecting the intellectual property rights, if you will. So one of the other big insights, you can say, that had been emerging in the company but took a turnaround and a crisis to transform was the attitude towards the outside stakeholders, in particular the fan communities. In this case, you can say not even the critics, not even the supersize me, but people who use Lego bricks in a different way than the company itself was able to imagine. So they were opening up to a lot of these people, taking them into the robotics, taking them into innovation, and they, it's a long story, short, were part of revitalizing the brand and showed the company ways forward in how it could integrate its basic play ideas both in digital space and you can say physical space. And last but not least, there was also a lot of cultural tensions in the company. I think it's fair to say that many years of success, plus if you live in a small country in the middle of nowhere to the extent that exists in Denmark, you could say that there was sort of a closed attitude. It was generation after generations, a very, very strong emotional commitment and very good for production and the local operation. But the fact was that by far the biggest market was the US, and one of the main tensions was between the Americans and the Danes, because you can say, what are some of the pressures, what are some of the needs in the marketplace? If you're going to make yourself visible in Walmart, it takes something more than the local toy store around the corner. So a lot of the issues confronting globalization also had to do with the employers' ability and willingness to listen to their international stakeholders. Now, I know Lego has been a global success, and certainly it has had a lot of production facilities here in Switzerland that was closed down as part of the you can say, economic crisis plan. But I think it's important to say that from a brand perspective and from a turnaround perspective, they not only clarified the vision, they strengthened a lot of the brand expression, the hierarchy, the sub-brands. I mean, there was a lot of, you can say, execution around that mission. But that was combined with opening up to stakeholders from the internal point of view. So it has been a combination, you can say, of a mutual, both cultural transformation where you put brand schools together. Lego has been a role model, I think, for doing employee-driven, living the brand, if you will say, where they not only use the brand schools to cascade down to the employees, but also, particularly in the crisis, use the brand school as platforms for the new top management team to interact with employees and get their ideas of what it would take to turn the company around. And at the same time also engaging, as I said, much more openly and directly with their fan communities and the various sceneries that they were creating, the events that all these people create. So the Lego brand turnaround is an important, I think, lesson in balancing what we will consider the three tension points, if you will, for corporate brand management. One is the top-bottom, you can say, whether it's Unilever, Lego, or McDonald's, you can say, in order to get your employees behind the brand, you have to show the employees what the brand can do for them. And in order to do that, then you need to connect top management, employees, and the whole discussion of turf wars that we will come back to between the various functions that own the brand. There's a lot of issues that relate to the hierarchy, if you will, the way you organize your structure for your brand. The other issue which I think the legal